Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to delve into several critical cybersecurity topics and issues that are in the news and that have made headlines, and let you know how they impact your life and what you can actually do to start protecting yourself and your businesses from all these threats that are happening by cyber criminals and state-sponsored hacking groups. So this week, guys, we're going to talk about the massive Oracle cloud breach and Microsoft's enhanced security measures for Teams, and then a shift in cyber attack response strategies from the Trump administration to emerging threats against the unhackable Mac users. We can cover a wide range of topics, and additionally, this week we're going to explore the PowerSchool's data breach and what new information has been revealed in the last week around that, and a cyber attack on DHR health systems and some other significant incidents impacting various sectors in today's episode. With me, as always, I have Andre and Randy. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show this week. How are you?
Hey, doing good. I was looking at episode 2 while you were talking. So now it's 4 years, 3 months is how long we've been doing our podcast.
Good work. Wow. Doesn't feel that long. I can tell you that.
A lot.
For whatever that means. Guys, as always, we don't run ads on the show. So please help us support this podcast, this live stream, by sharing, liking, subscribing, doing whatever you can on whatever social media platform you might be consuming this on. We're on the LinkedIn, we're on the YouTube, we're on Facebook, and we're on every audio podcasting platform known to man. So no matter where you consume us, you can do a good deed by letting the world know that this is a worthwhile podcast by performing one of those actions. And as such, we'll continue to bring you ad-free cybersecurity content that you can use and learn from. So here we go. Oracle data breach, guys. That's the number one article on the docket for today. And it appears that there are 6 million records exposed in over 140,000 tenants using Oracle Cloud services. What happened here? Do we know?
Yeah, so we have Oracle. Basically, Oracle is saying, no, this is not true. They're denying it. But on the other side, you have a user, a threat actor, specifically by the name of Rose87168. And they're saying, no, we're selling this data. This is data from their Oracle Cloud, their Java keystones, encrypted SSO passwords, a lot of important stuff. So you have one side that is having a big for sale sign, and the other side is saying, nope, this is not our data, nothing to see here. And they're denying everything.
Yeah, and he sounds a little skeptical, Brian, because we see this every time at the beginning of attack. There's always the nothing to see here, So not saying if it's true or not, it appears that it is. So Oracle's saying it doesn't, but it appears that it's not true. It does appear that it is true. The crazy thing, though, is the customers that use Oracle. So we're talking large businesses. We're talking large sectors of companies in the financial area. We're talking governments that use Oracle Cloud. And 6 million records and 140,000 tenants, that doesn't sound like their internal stuff. So maybe it's not from Oracle at all. But this could have some pretty wide-ranging effects if it's actually from Oracle and if all this is real.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things people should know. Oracle plays in a lot of different worlds, so to speak. They act as a software as a service application with like their Oracle like accounting based system. A lot of enterprise mid-market companies subscribe to that service. This could potentially be at play here. We don't know. They also act as like kind of like an AWS or an Azure type server where you can kind of spin up instances of servers and things like that in the Oracle cloud. Recently, Oracle's made a big push to sell those cloud services to AI customers and people that want to develop their own AI infrastructure internally. So this could have a lot of interesting implications as we learn more if it's true, guys. The interesting thing that caught my eye when I was reading the article was there's obviously a vulnerability is being exploited, and it's in the Oracle Fusion middleware, which I don't know much about Oracle, but that name just sounds like that sits in the middle of a lot of the stuff that they run. So who knows what's at play here? The other interesting thing is the CVE on this has a year of 2021. So I'm having a real hard time with a 4-year-old vulnerability being exploited in 2025.
Yeah.
Yes. But isn't that something that we're seeing constantly? I mean,
yeah, but this would be, in my opinion, this would be more irresponsible than what we saw with like Rackspace deciding not to patch their Exchange servers, right? Because it's kind of like this is their middleware. This is their kind of like software that sits in between two things, right? Two pieces of hardware or something, right? To make two devices communicate is probably what this Fusion middleware does.
It works with their back-end services and
right.
with some of their application software and then other application software to get them to talk together. I just looked it up.
Right. So that alone being circumvented or exploited is scary in itself, because what has to pass through there for things to work.
And it has to be in an environment of trust to pass through.
Right. So the access manager is tied tightly to this, right? Because every time a request is probably sent to that middleware, it's going to want to authenticate it, right? So more than likely, they have credentials or they have tokens, right? Which, if sold, would mean that if I buy something off the dark web from this group, I could potentially have somebody's token to log into their cloud infrastructure.
Right.
With no username or password or no MFA challenge.
And those tokens are going to have a longer shelf life than if it's just a user logging in, because we're talking connections between back-end applications.
Correct.
Those don't get renewed every single day usually.
And usually it's quite a lift to change them.
Yes.
Because you're basically disconnecting services and having to reconnect them.
So maybe Oracle's technically correct. Maybe none of this is officially Oracle. Maybe they've cracked something on the Fusion, like your
right. This is the same as an exposed S3 bucket. These customers didn't protect things away or configure things the way that they should have, and somebody figured it out and just went through as many tenants as they could and stole whatever they could.
And it could be a connection from something Oracle to something not Oracle that they're, so technically Oracle could not, maybe they're not lying, but at the end of the day, it is them and they are lying. Does that make sense? Because
it's their customers' keys to get in.
Yep.
But it was their customer's tenant individually that was compromised, not Oracle from the back end. Right. So somebody did a lot of work.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's not like they got into Oracle and just stole all this at once. They meticulously looked for tenants that they could exploit and stole information from the ones that they could. That's what it appears this is.
But it would definitely still be automation, because we're talking 140,000 tenants.
Yeah, somebody probably built, once they figured out that it could be done, they probably built some tools, but it was still a very manual process, and it wasn't the holy grail, so to speak, right? This was one account after another compromised, which means these customers don't have visibility on what's happening in the Oracle Cloud either. So, any thoughts on this? And what do I mean by that, folks? Like, get a SOC, get a team monitoring the connections to your cloud environment. Use zero trust. Put a SASE in place. There are things that you can do. There are layers of protection and detection that you can put in place on these clouds to know when bad actors are actually gaining access to your system, and it's not your employees. Right? These are what companies need to do.
And when you say SASE, that's SASE, not SASSY.
Yeah. Big shout out to Luke. Got his picture on the LinkedIn there. What's up, Luke? How are you? So moving right along, guys, we have Microsoft here. Let me see what's going on. I got to pull up my show notes that are totally gone because I was on a different screen. So Microsoft, guys, is implementing a new security feature, I guess, in response to the whole article or the whole segment that we did a couple weeks ago when we pointed out that hackers were actually using Teams, phishing emails, phishing messages through Teams to get access to your employees by getting, number one, getting their attention, getting them to respond, and then two, flooding their inboxes with phishing emails and then telling them, hey, I'm from IT support, I'm here to help. And then, that would eventually turn into a remote support session with the supposed tech support help guy who's actually a hacker. So Microsoft's done something about that, it appears, or at least made an attempt to. Fill us in. What's happening?
Yeah, so what we have here is, you talked about, Brian, is Microsoft was doing a very poor job in securing their Microsoft Teams. So if you look at, for example, someone sends you a phishing email in your email, you typically have some type of back-end system that's analyzing the link, doing sandboxing, making sure there's nothing malicious. But within Microsoft Teams, it was pretty much open. So now the first thing they're doing is they're scanning for malicious content. So if someone is sending you a malicious link via Teams, before it even gets to you, Microsoft is now looking at that just to make sure that everything is okay. Another cool feature is they're allowing quarantine. So if you do quarantine in the sense that if you were to get a Teams message, just like how you can report phishing or something like that with your emails, you can now do that with your Microsoft Teams. So if someone sends out phishing Teams to you, you can now just right-click and then just report it, and then it goes into the Microsoft community, and then they can investigate that. I'll let you take it away with the rest, Randy.
Yeah. So the reporting is good. That's Microsoft has that capability elsewhere, but bringing it in here is great. The sandboxing of the URLs and all that stuff. Once again, that's existed for other Microsoft products. Every time
existed for Instagram. Instagram does that.
Right, exactly. So that's the other thing I was going to say is the other feature I think has kind of been there, but I don't know if they're turning it on by default or making it easier to find. But this ability to control who you talk to, now it's more granular, where before you could have a zero trust and only add people that you wanted to talk to on a domain basis. And then now they've made it to where you can do that. You can also control by user. So, it's probably a little late. I don't mean to be negative or whatever. We should have probably had this a year ago or something. But it is good bringing in these granular controls, ability to report stuff, the sandboxing of and checking for bad links and things like that, and being able to have a quarantine. I like it. I think it's a great next step. Although maybe it's a little behind the on the time. Should have been a little sooner, but oh well, it's here.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I've been saying for years is that they were too, they saw Zoom as a threat during COVID. They were too quick to rush this product out to get the enterprise to adopt it. But their timing was really good. I mean, if they waited any longer, they would have been screwed. And they wouldn't have the market share that they have today. But they did a really good job of penetrating the enterprise during COVID. Enterprise switched to Teams. That trickled down to mid-market and small to medium-sized businesses. And I don't think anyone would challenge me if I said that Teams is the default communicating platform for most businesses today, right? I think most companies use Teams. I think all of our calls that we're on together in our mastermind groups and different groups that we're in are all done on Teams now. I think for every 20 calls I have on Teams, I'm doing one on Zoom anymore, right? And that changed. Like COVID, it was all Zoom. It was all Zoom 100%. But in that process, they really like basic things, like I said, stuff that Facebook and Instagram have been doing for years, they didn't even think about until now, right? So good job to them. I mean, they didn't, I guess I'll give them kudos because they didn't just do one thing. They did about 7 things to help cyber defenders deal with this threat and help users deal with the threat. But the other cool thing is that they're going to enhance team security with AI agents and advanced threat protection built right into Teams, which I think is really cool that they did that. No other, Zoom isn't doing that. And no other communication platform like Slack or any of those tools are doing anything like this. So it's an opportunity here for Microsoft to really separate themselves in that category in terms of security and people's, ability to trust that, if they have, these internal kind of robots running around looking for threats. I think that's a really positive thing for everybody.
Yep.
All right, cool. So moving right along. Any more on that? You got something to add there, Randy, or no? We're good.
No, I mean overall, I'm pretty happy about it.
Cool. And something else we can be happy about is Trump doing the things should be done and shifting the cyber attack readiness to state and local governments in wake of info sharing cuts. So interesting that things might be playing out like this, guys. But at the end of the day, the Trump administration seems to be looking at things at the federal level and making decisions on whether or not that is something that should really be handled at the federal level, and then telling the states that they kind of need to deal with it on their own. Cybersecurity kind of being one of those things. We can debate whether we like this or not here in a second. But the reality of the lay of the land is when a lot of these local governments get hit, they immediately turn to the federal government to bail them out. Right. And I hate that attitude, like personally, like I just don't like it. Like I'm a big, ownership guy. You own your shit. And I don't like it when I see other people like turn to somebody else. I don't want to call it a handout, but at the end of the day, you failed to do the right thing. And now you need a handout. You need the federal government to provide you with money and FBI and CISA resources to help you get out of a situation. And I think, there's some big businesses out there that subscribe to the same kind of methodology. Your small business isn't going to get help from CISA and FBI, but if you're a big business, you'll certainly get help from CISA and the FBI.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were done.
I am done. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Randy. This is your voice, so go ahead.
No, I'm just Andre. I'm just saying that you're right, Brian. As a small business, if I get attacked and I get a breach, I'm going to have to deal with it. And usually, honestly, it's inefficient reaching out to the government for something like this anyway. And you've said it before. We've said it before on this podcast. Probably 99.9% of all the attacks out there are preventable because we're seeing I'm not saying they all are, but we're seeing on our podcasts, like the one we started off our show with, using a CVE from 4 years ago. So I'm just saying, like, the counties, the cities, they need to start taking responsibility now before they get cyber attacked. Most of the cyber attacks can be stopped. And the ones that are truly nation state, the FBI and things like that, they already know those are going on, and they'll get involved when they need to for things like that. I guess my message, what I'm trying to say here, get protected now. Deal with it now. It's much more efficient anyway to do it that way. Sorry, couldn't stop myself, Brian.
They're good. So go ahead, Andre.
No, so it's going to be interesting to see. So if a city gets attacked, their resources are basically now trying to still run the city, and now they call for help. Does that mean they're going to now go more to this? If it's a city, they'll go more to the state government for help. We've seen it where they went to the military. Remember, one of the states went to the state guard, the National Guard, their cyber division. So that may be another way. But I agree with what this article is saying, where you shouldn't be going to the FBI for every single every attack, because it's not fair to the business. They don't have small business doesn't have that resource. But like it was also mentioned, but if there's a nation state attack happening, if Russia's pounding on the door of a small city government, FBI should help give advisement, things like that. But otherwise, for remediation, you're on your own. Contact your insurance company like everybody else and do your incident response plan. Follow your plan.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out too. Is the administration is not saying like we want to give this to the states and local and not ever have to deal with it, right? They're saying that what we say on this show every week practically. If you go back to probably day one, the first episode, we've always said prepare. Left side of the event, left side of boom, right? Be ready. You don't want to have to deal with an event. And that's what this administration is saying. They're saying, like, we will support these state and local governments in being prepared, but we're no longer going to continue to bail them out because they're not prepared.
Right.
They're choosing to use the federal government as their cybersecurity plan.
Right.
There's no insurance company that's going to, cover a local government, right? You're not going to get enough cyber insurance to cover a small city, right? That's why these states and local governments have to turn to things like FEMA and use these federal levers that they pull on when these events happen. The other interesting thing too, guys, is that they're not just talking about cyber events here. They're talking about any disaster to be prepared, right? The federal government wants to be in a position to support preparedness, not deal with the aftermath of the event. And I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Right.
So what about hospitals? Because we always see hospitals as well go. Do you think that's a kind of applying to all?
Sorry?
Like if it was a hospital and they're down, we've also seen where hospitals also go to the FBI for help. So
that's what I mean, right? That's what I mean when I say, like, if you're big enough or you're important enough, you're going to get help from the federal government, right? This is just a change in mindset, right? And it's not a bad one. It's telling everybody you need to get prepared, because everybody seems to think that there's going to be some kind of safety net when this stuff happens to them. Right. And if we continue to do things like provide this kind of support that we're providing after the fact, because we have too big to fail. Right. That's the attitude. I feel like this administration, if a hospital gets hit, they might fail because they're not going to get bailed out, because they're going to look at them and go, well, you didn't prepare. Look, if your business, anybody who owns a small business or a medium-sized business, and you're like not important in the grand scheme of critical infrastructure and the economy, right? If your business gets hit, and the insurance company comes in and says, you didn't do enough, we're not paying you, you're going out of business. So it's no different than what any other business would go through if they got hit with a massive cyber attack.
Yep.
So it's kind of leveling the playing field so everybody's playing on the same space, because some companies just know, hey, if we get hit, we can just turn to the feds and they'll bail us out. So we don't need to buy all these cybersecurity protections, or we don't need to do cybersecurity even at all. So
policies.
What's that?
It's common sense.
Yeah, and obviously critics have expressed concern that this shift may leave states vulnerable to sophisticated cyber threats. Well, if they don't do anything, yes. But the whole idea here is give them the resources and give them the money to prepare. Don't give, like, we're not giving any money to detection and protection, right? We're giving all the money to response and recovery. And these guys are saying, no, let's put more money into protection and detection, and let's stop, pumping them full of drugs with giving them money on the detection and response piece, right? Because that's how I see it. You're just really just giving an addict more drugs when you do that. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and
you're not helping the problem. You're just masking the problem.
It's a codependency.
Yes,
more codependency.
You're an enabler, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yep. That's a good analogy there.
And you can take a look at the city of New York and the state of New York, a state that leads the country in cybersecurity frameworks. They have their own framework under the Department of Financial Services in New York, right? And nobody wants to get hacked in New York because they know what they're going to have to deal with.
Right.
Right. So I think that's kind of the attitude that all businesses in all 50 states need to start feeling.
And you mentioned that people have a concern that it will leave the cities and the counties and the states vulnerable to nation state attacks. Like, okay, so literally they're vulnerable right now. Like, so we're talking about making them less vulnerable. And we've also seen when those types of organizations get involved, the federal government does step in. We saw a guy, a business person, I won't really go into the details, not customers of ours, but they got hacked. They didn't know better. They called the FBI. They're like 5 users. The FBI actually helped them because the attack was part of a larger attack that they were investigating. So I guess what I'm trying to say is when that happens, well, first off, one, we couldn't be any more vulnerable than we are right now. So any posture towards preparedness is better. And then two, if it really comes down to a nation state, then the federal government's gonna have to step in. So I think it's a good move. We need to do it. We need to have more readiness across all fronts.
So our in about a month from now, we're going to see, instead of a city being down for 3 days or a week or something like that, we're going to start seeing months, because they're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and the reality is you may go down if you have some sort of a breach or a possible breach. We dealt with one recently. The company ended up being down about 24 hours as we took all precautions possible. And it turned out to be a nothing burger, but that's the whole reason why you're prepared. So what potentially could be business ending, which that could have been, just turned out to be a blip. Was it a pain in the butt? You betcha. But it was just a blip, and everybody, moved on from it pretty dang quick. That's what we want to get. I see this article, man. Y'all are lashing out at me now with this article.
Back to back for you, man.
So here we go. We have the hackers are coming after Mac users, like our friend Randy on the show here. And we'll talk about why that is. I mean, I've always told people, and one of the problems that's highlighted in this article is the perception of enhanced security by Mac users, which is a thing. I've talked to many people over the years, I think more so maybe 10 years ago than today, where people would be like, oh, no, I hear Macs can't get hacked. And it's like, well, no, they can. It's just that hackers don't focus on those because Windows has 90% of the market share. They did at the time. So they go after Windows, right? If you got a 9 out of 10 chances of hitting a Windows system, probably going to be the one you target, which is why Windows is targeted more than others, right? But as always, that trend doesn't continue. Where there's money to be made, the hackers will go, and they've figured out ways to exploit and make money off Mac devices. So let's hear it, Randy.
So I have a saying that I've said for 15 years to Mac users. Security on a Mac. So they try to be secure. It's still a computer and it can be hackable. But what I tell people is it's like using a Mac is like being behind a small wall in a war. You imagine
it's like being in China.
Battlefield.
It's like being in China.
Yeah. You imagine a giant battlefield and there's a little wall over there and you're hiding behind the wall. Nobody's shooting at the wall because there's not a tank there. It's a small thing. It's kind of not noticeable. I think that Mac computers are like 6% of all computers, maybe 10% in the USA. I don't know what the number is exactly. I know, like you said,
computers are very low. Phones are a different story.
Yeah, phones are a different story. That's right. So there's that. There are things that Apple does to be secure. And another thing I've been saying for years, if you could just fake the pop-up where people have to enter in their username and password, if you could just fake that pop-up, then you could get your authentication to basically do whatever you wanted on the Mac machine. Now, out of the box, there are certain system parts that are frozen that you have to actually go into like a restore mode to be able to turn those off or whatever. So that's a good thing. But that's basically what they're doing here. Edge blocked those little pop-ups where people gave their credentials. So they're just targeting now Safari, which is not Edge, still built on, I think, WebKit, or whatever. I think there's somewhere they have, they share some code base, but basically they're, I'm rambling on and on. Basically, they're using Safari now to get those little pop-ups, to get the credentials from the Mac user, and then they can do it basically whatever they want.
Yeah, so if you guys remember those tech support scams, or just these pop-up windows coming on the Microsoft computers, Windows computers, and the Edge browser has found a way to basically scan what you're viewing on your browser, and then if it detects that, hey, this is some type of scam, phishing site or whatever, it actually will block you. In this case, unfortunately, Mac Safari. And they have not been able to have that technology yet on their systems, and that's basically why the hackers are pivoting to the Mac crowd.
Yeah, and Safari's not very popular with Mac users. I rarely ever run into a Mac user that uses Safari. It's funny, like everybody on the iPhone, I think the majority use Safari and don't even know how to download Chrome. But on the computers, the majority, I believe, if it was my guess, do not use Safari. It doesn't make sense. It's not intuitive. So I don't know. There's 100 browsers out there you can install and start using, and they make sense right out of the box. And Safari is kind of different. So yeah.
So just a couple things for Mac users. Stay informed. Make sure you're aware of this stuff. Don't overtrust the technology. While it is good, while Randy mentions they do a really good job of trying to wall the bad stuff out of their environment. Just be aware that things can get through, as he said. So stay informed. Join. There's plenty of Mac newsletters out there that come out that will send you an alert or an email letting you know of these types of things and what you need to be aware of and what kind of attack it is, because we've seen attacks, as simple as receiving a text message, right? So you need to be aware of these things that exist. And, maybe there's a game out there or some kind of app that you can download that seems really cool at the time, or maybe there's a little bit of buzz around it, but it's chock full of malware, right? That's something you're going to want to know, if you download it or if you might download it. So make sure you use antivirus on your Mac, even though you don't think you need it. There are tools that exist that will tell you if something is bad, if there's a malicious link sent to your text messages or through Messenger or through one of your DMs on your social media apps. These antivirus or these protection software on your phones, they don't just look for bad apps and bad files anymore. They look for links and stuff that is sent to you from a phishing standpoint, and it looks to alert you and say, hey, this link is suspicious. So this link goes back to a server that we don't like, right? And it tells you these things. Use a VPN if you're on your device and you're on a open Wi-Fi network. I mean, don't use them in the first place. But I know a lot of people that go to a lot of the kids' sporting events, the fields, the rinks, the facilities that you go into, basketball. They all have free Wi-Fi or they all have Wi-Fi, and parents jump on those like it's nothing. And you got to be careful with that stuff. And if you're going, I don't really recommend using VPNs, but the ones that are built into like a Bitdefender antivirus is fine to use, in my opinion, and you should use it over using nothing. But again, avoid downloading these applications that you aren't aware of, or they're untrusted. Make sure you know what your kids are downloading, and be skeptical of any alerts or messages or requests for personal information that come through to your device, because this is usually how these targeted attacks start on these types of devices.
And one thing I was going to add, Brian, is on a Mac, the OS part is pretty frozen unless you specifically do things to quote unquote unfreeze it. But the user part, which I just call a userland is where all the juicy data is anyway. So even if you can download and run Chrome without having admin rights or entering in your password, over there on your user part is still susceptible. That's where your data is. So you're totally right what you're saying. Good advice there.
All right, guys, moving right along. Power Schools says, trust the hackers, and the response flunks the cyber test is the headline here on Forbes. And the deal is that we all remember the December 2024 Power Schools breach. And if you don't remember, Power Schools is a leading provider of cloud-based education technology. And they experienced a significant data breach, and unauthorized individuals accessed sensitive information for many school districts, including the names, addresses, social security numbers, medical records, and academic data of students and staff across the U.S. and Canada. In response, Power Schools reportedly paid a ransom to hackers, who then provided video evidence purportedly showing the deletion of the stolen data. This approach has been criticized for its reliance on the assurances of cyber criminals, as there's no guarantee that the data has been permanently erased or not further disseminated. Critics argue that paying the ransom may encourage further criminal activity and does not assure data security. I think I went off on the show about this a few weeks ago. They advocate for organizations to invest in robust cybersecurity measures, including multi-factor authentication. Well, the application needs to offer it first, right, Randy and Andre? Regular security audits and comprehensive employee training to such breaches. So looks like the video part is actually pretty cool. I've never seen that before in ransomware negotiations and the like. So that's pretty interesting that they went with video evidence. Oh, look, they deleted it. It's great. Just quickly, I remember talking on the show a few weeks ago saying, giving examples of weird ways that this stuff ends up in the hands of other criminals or other people, right? Kind of pointed out the fact that these cyber criminal organizations don't really necessarily take care of your data. We've seen servers be stolen. We've seen servers be resold. and this data ends up, and we've seen servers end up, these guys, they go in and the feds take them, and or somebody else gets their hands on the devices after the feds arrest all these guys. All different kinds of ways that this information can get into the hands of other people. Go back and watch our previous episodes if you want to kind of get more detail on what I talked about there, but that's a thing, right? This stuff does get stolen and ends up in the wrong hands of the wrong people in many different ways than just, the hacker stealing it directly. Somebody could steal it from these guys, and that's the reality.
This was a pretty bad breach. We've talked about it several times on our show, going all the way from August through December. It looks like the bad guys were in there and basically just using the same credentials that they had somehow found. And I guess what I wanted to say is, if you're a software developer, we call this software as a service, or SaaS, SaaS. If you're developing a software as a service, it's so important that you not only have cybersecurity controls on your as you're developing it, and then on your software, but then you also want to offer it for your end users. And this just it appears to be a failure just across the board on all those fronts, which you're dealing with data that's for hackers. This is their, platinum data, because if they can get the data of kids, they can open up all kinds of accounts, do all kinds of things, and nobody will know until that kid turns, might even before the kid turns 25, that they apply for a credit card or something, and they come back, with horrible credit, that they find out, oh, wow, had identity theft that went on for years and years. So this is a rough one.
Yeah, if you're in charge of, they're saying about 60 million students' information is now been compromised. I would think that's that's someone's full-time job, should be to make sure that there's no way this information can get out.
Sir, we will continue to follow up on this ever growing situation here with the power schools, and there's going to be a lot of lessons learned coming out of that one. I can tell you that. So March 2025, guys, DHR Health, based in Edinburgh, Texas, Randy, down your way, experienced a cyber attack that disrupted its information systems. The organization promptly implemented established downtime procedures, transitioning to paper records to maintain patient care continuity. Despite the IT challenges, DHR Health remained operational, with most scheduled medical procedures proceeding as planned, except for those in the catheterization lab. Health system assured that no employees were asked to take vacation or unpaid leave during this period. Woo-hoo, celebrate. However, some patients reported appointment disruptions, highlighting the broader impact of the incident. DHR Health's IT teams are actively working to restore full system functionality. The organization has emphasized its commitment to patient care and has backup protocols to ensure seamless operations. And for assistance or to contact DHR Health clinics, if you're impacted, you can call 956 doctors. I love that phone number. All right. So, Randy, it's in your neck of the woods. Where's Edinburgh?
It's down in what we call the RGV, the Rio Grande Valley. It's one of the fastest growing areas in the country. Ton of international commerce, right on the border with Mexico. Ton of international commerce in that whole region, basically from the tip of Texas up till Laredo area. That bottom couple hundred miles is just growing like crazy, and lots of commerce going on down there, like I said. And I don't think that in the city areas that we're dealing with underserved as far as medical goes, but Texas is a huge land of contrast. And so we've got just massive city areas and then just massive rural areas. And that's when I first read this, was my first concern, because large parts of the Rio Grande Valley are farming and rural, and they are going to be underserved by healthcare, where you have one hospital for 100 miles, might be the only hospital. And it's because of lack of people there to support even having a hospital. So that's my big concern here. Is that going to affect some of the rural areas that are hit hardest by these kind of outages?
Andre, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Just another week week talking about healthcare being hacked. We talked about schools and healthcare.
I read an article, perused an article earlier, Brian, talked about over 700 healthcare facilities were hit, and it being one of the fastest growing, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but being one of the fastest growing sectors for ransomware still. So this is a huge concern. They get a hold of the records. There's so much they can do with it from a criminal perspective. So.
And what's interesting, actually, now that the federal government won't be as involved, I don't know if CrowdStrike is a public company because, all of these companies, they always like using the word CrowdStrike whenever there's a incident so people can be like, oh, okay, you got CrowdStrike. All right, everything's okay now. But they sure are going to be really busy now that these organizations have to go out to these type of companies for incident response.
All right, guys. In March of 2025, TA's Valley Christian School in Putnam County, West Virginia, experienced a cybersecurity incident involving a student receiving an email threatening to disseminate a hit list from their account unless a specific file was downloaded. The West Virginia Fusion Center's analysis revealed that, I don't know why that's popping up, on March 20th, the students' Discord and Google accounts were compromised through a sophisticated cyber attack with unauthorized access occurring from 3 different IP addresses across various states within a 20-minute span. It's interesting. In response, law enforcement increased their presence at the school to ensure that the safety of the students and staff. Deputies were stationed on campus during arrival times to address concerns and provide reassurance to the school community. And this incident highlights the growing trend of cyber threats targeting educational institutions, emphasizing the need for robust cybersecurity measures and awareness programs to protect students and staff from such sophisticated. I don't know how you train on something like this. I've never even heard of something like this.
Mm-hmm.
This is pretty wild. And this seems like some kind of a test from some well-funded organization.
Yeah, and it's pretty, obviously it's bad because you're putting, these middle school and high school kids in a tough situation where they're like, they don't have that fully brain developed to like, all right, I got an email. It's saying that if I don't download this file, people are going to think that I'm trying to do some type of school shooting. So let me just go ahead and do it. And then from there, which is the bad part, is they're able to download the file, it runs some type of script in the background, have them log into their Google Discord. Then and I imagine that's the
who knows what that file's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
stealing everything off their phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's a big manipulation on the student. So you're kind of bypassing IT, you're bypassing teachers, and you're going straight to.
Well, where did they get the information? My question would be, where did you get the information? Like, it's one thing if you do everybody's Google. I mean, the fact that they're doing so many Google accounts, but then they're doing Discord too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is really well thought out and planned. So either it's somebody on the inside who knew the kids and knew like everybody, or somebody else is testing something bigger than that.
I mean, but isn't that like 2 articles ago, the whole power schools?
True.
Yeah.
True. So it could be, yeah. Interesting. Who knows? But good connection there.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, where would you get that kind of information?
Yeah.
Right. Every kid's school, and then you cross-reference it with Google accounts and Discord accounts that were created with that same email.
Right.
That's wild. So, I mean, I know my kids, like they use Google for their email, right? And they have an email address assigned to them. My hope would be that they're not instructing the kids to use the school account to create Discord accounts. Like,
Yeah, single sign-on.
that's where you gotta, yeah, but that's where you gotta stop. Like, no good. This is where schools need to get smarter about what they're doing and how they're doing things. Because there's a lot of, the shadow IT term. I see a lot of shadow IT going on with teachers and stuff, just trying to get stuff done,
Yep.
just trying to get work done. And there's no standardization or no rules about setting up a Discord or allowing students to set up a Discord. That stuff needs to be in place. Schools need to run their students, and the same way students should be using technology should be the same way that their parents are using technology in work, right? There should be rules, there should be training in place, there should be policies in place from a technology standpoint that restrict students from being able to do certain things that could potentially lead to a threat.
There's usually not. So
no, there's not, but I think it starts with education, right? It starts with I don't think what I just said, I don't think many schools have even ever adopted that thought process, right? And then on top of it, you need to put real cybersecurity experts, not like the head computer teacher or the IT person who runs the IT for the school. They're usually the cybersecurity person too, right? And it's all about job security for these people. They go out, they learn, they take a course or two, and they deem themselves cybersecurity experts, and because they know a little bit more than everybody else, the superintendent and the school blesses them as a cybersecurity expert, and then we run around with a bunch of schools that are completely ill prepared for what's going to hit them.
And they just mentioned in passing too, right? So it's kind of like, hey, by the way, so you're saying now in August, in addition to fire drills that our kids have to go through, and tornado drills, hurricane drills, security drills, school shooter drills, now they also have to do cybersecurity type drills as well.
And they need to, and not only that, they need to get smarter with what the actual threats are out there, right? Because, allowing kids to set up Discords and things like that, even if it's in the name of getting work done in school, you got to understand the risks involved with that before you go and do it, right? And that's really my message is we have a lot of catch up to do in terms of educating not only students but the people who are running the networks on what the risks are.
But it's also bad policy on the Google, just like with Microsoft, you do bad impossible travel. Yeah. They're saying that 3 different IP addresses across various states within a 20-minute span. That could have been.
So like there's all these games out there, right, that kids can play, right, online. And a lot of those gaming sites are blocked, but people have invented like websites that you can go to that bypass the school's filters because they're looking for certain URLs, certain domains, or certain web categories. And they get these websites and they like iframe or they API in the game into that website. So, and kids know how to find these sites and access these sites and get to these games, right? So like, that's what I mean. Like the state of cybersecurity, there's a massive, I want to say it's almost delusional. There's a delusional scenario going on in our kids in our schools today with administrators and people in charge thinking that they have good cybersecurity when they really don't. And all I need to do is have a 5-minute conversation with the superintendent or the person in charge of their IT to figure that out. And I would say 99% of the schools in the United States fall in that category. So here we go, guys, talking about another government entity that is dealing with a attack in Union County, Pennsylvania. I don't know. I hate all these pop-ups. Companies that build these websites with all these pop-ups, you're ridiculous. Like that's why nobody reads your newspapers. Union County, Pennsylvania experienced a ransomware attack that compromised personal information of its residents. The breach was detected on March 13th, prompting immediate action from county officials. They launched an investigation, engaged cybersecurity experts to secure a network and notify federal law enforcement agencies. There you go. Hey, we notified federal law enforcement agencies because we need help. By March 17th, investigators confirmed that the cyber criminals had exfiltrated data, primarily affecting individuals involved with county law enforcement, court-related matters, and other county services. The compromised information includes social security numbers and driver's license numbers. I guarantee you it includes more than that. The county has pledged to conduct a thorough review to identify all affected individuals and will provide written notifications along with complimentary credit monitoring services to those impacted.
For 1 year.
I mean, I think at this point, most of the country has free credit monitoring.
Yeah, no.
Would you not agree?
Yep.
The fact that you're buying more just really makes no sense because I think I'm covered by like 15 different entities for the next 20 years.
Yeah, just freeze your credit reports. The best thing you can do.
Right. You can take matters into your own hands, but I mean, you shouldn't have to pay for it because I'm sure you can find somewhere where your data has been exposed where you get free credit monitoring.
Right.
As of now, no ransomware group claimed responsibility for the attack, guys. And the incident underscores a growing trend of cyber attacks targeting local governments, as we talked about earlier, and why the Trump administration wants to deal with this head on and change the narrative, right? So, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. So, no mention that I read of any kind of downtime, which says to me they probably paid a ransom.
I think right there where that's why I said what I said when I said whatever I said. I don't remember what I just said 2 minutes ago. No ransomware group has claimed responsibility. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, that, and this just keeps happening over and over and over again. We sound like a broken record. And they really need to take the cities, the counties, the states really need to take preemptive measures like we talked about at length at the beginning of the show. Looks like Brian got a call.
But you know what I don't like? Something that's mentioned in the article, which is kind of like going back to preventative measures, is in the article it says Union County has implemented several security measures to prevent further unauthorized access. Deployment of advanced security tools, continuous network monitoring, enterprise-wide password resets, and enhanced external network access restriction. So 3 out of those 4 things means that you weren't doing it before.
Right. Yep.
Which is why they need to call the federal government for help. Right? Because they weren't doing it. They weren't doing anything, and now they need somebody to come in and bail them out. All right, guys, last one of the day. Good job. Good show. We'll get through this quick. 23andMe. We wanted to talk about this. Not necessarily a data breach yet, but it could be, and people need to be aware. It's a very popular DNA kind of genealogy website, service that started, 2006, or 20 years ago, guys. Wow. They finally come to an end as people really don't see much value and they really couldn't figure out how to make money with this stuff. And they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, and their CEO and co-founder has resigned. And they were one of the first companies, and they gained recognition for direct-to-consumer DNA testing kits, which allowed individuals to explore their ancestry and even figure out some health predispositions in their DNA. The company went public in 2021, and they were valued at that time at $6 billion. But in that time, they struggled to achieve profitability, facing declining demand for its services and challenges in generating recurring revenue. I think there was also, people started to open their eyes to these data breaches and potentially things like this happening. I think that's part of the reason why people decided maybe this isn't a good idea to send my DNA off to a company like this. And then they said in just 4 short years, guys, their valuation went from $6 billion to just under 50 million.
Wow.
And then, as Randy, you pointed out in the green room, 23andMe was a victim of a significant data breach that exposed the personal information of 7 million users, which led to a class action lawsuit and a $30 million settlement, which kind of, is cheap, in my opinion, for what was stolen, further damaging the company's reputation and financial standing. The breach raised concerns about the security of sensitive genetic data, prompting many customers to request the deletion of their information. California Attorney General Rob Bonta advised residents to consider directing 23andMe to delete their data and destroy any genetic material samples held by the company as part of the settlement. And now we're in these bankruptcy proceedings where they kind of are on a lifeline here. So a lot of customers, if you've been a customer of 23andMe, are being encouraged to go in and download their data, which you're allowed to do now, and request the company to delete and destroy all of your personal information that they have of you, which is an option you do have. So obviously this company could come out of bankruptcy and everything could be hunky-dory and could turn out to be a big nothing burger, as they say. But Randy, you have bigger concerns, and what are they?
Well, I mean, so it's now valued at 50 million. The data alone to a criminal or criminal enterprise is worth way more than $50 million.
Or an adversary.
And so you're running the risk now of it being bought by a stand-up company that behind it is the CCP or maybe one of these criminal organizations. I don't know, that wants to get into a different, a different line of work slightly. Maybe tweak how they do it. But that's the thing here. And your DNA, I mean, there's a lot of things that could be used against you at some point. Do you know what I mean? For criminal activities or whatever at some point in the future. If you have anything here, I would definitely say go in and delete it as soon as you can.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. And my point was, and I talked about this with you guys in the green room, but I'll give you an analogy. I'll try to explain this to everybody the best I can, right? If you had an ounce of gold, you wouldn't take that ounce of gold and just walk into, say, I don't know, a Costco and just throw it all over the place, right? But that's what you're doing with your data. And today, your data, your personal information, things about you are what companies use to make money. That is the gold, the digital gold today. So when 23andMe goes to bankruptcy and they have to liquidate their assets are literally your data. So your data is going to be sold or auctioned off for this company to survive. So you need to look 10 years down the road when you give an organization your personal information, what could potentially happen with that? And I know we haven't been trained to think that way, but you need to start thinking that way because cyber criminals can make money off your data now. And, in 1980, that wasn't really a thing. It is very much a thing today where in maybe 10 clicks of a mouse, they can start making thousands of dollars off your personal data, which is absolutely insane. Just like in 10 clicks of a mouse, you could become a social media influencer. In 10 clicks of a mouse, a really good cyber criminal could become a millionaire. That's how easy it is today on both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be careful. You need to watch out. And as Randy said, all three of us, I think, agree. If you're a 23andMe customer, get in there today and delete your stuff because it's not going to end up in a good place, in my opinion. If it already hasn't.
I mean, Google could buy it and just merge it in with the data they have on us. You know what I mean? So
it's really up in the air what happens to this data at this point. So, you gotta be aware and you gotta take this in your own hands and handle this if you care about your personal information and maybe don't want to have to deal with identity fraud one day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, great show. Thank you again for your time, and please remember, give us the support, share our show. We got a lot of good comments again this morning. I think we're going to try to move the podcast to this time or around this time. We seem to get more engagement and more people coming through. This is the second time we did it this early, and through looking at the comments, there's a lot more here now than normally appear at the noon hour or so that we normally do it. So thanks, Mike. We appreciate the support. And Luke, again, obviously, and then we have a LinkedIn user. Appreciate the support, everybody. Keep throwing the comments in. We'll keep bringing you ad-free content on cybersecurity and how you can protect yourself. I'm Brian with Randy and Andre, and we will see you guys next week. Take care, everyone.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.